My friends, let the conversations begin. As co-chair of the Jewish Leadership Conference, along with my esteemed colleagues Roger Hertog in New York, Jonathan Silver in Washington, D.C., and Amiad Cohen in Jerusalem, I am honored to welcome our viewers and speakers from around the world, thousands strong, for 2 days of serious discussion about Jews, Israel, and the future of America. Now don't worry, we will allow occasional breaks to stretch your legs or grab a cup of coffee, and the videos of every session will be available in real time in case your kids or grandkids rightly demand your attention. But this much I know. Rarely in Jewish history have so many important thinkers and leaders gathered together at one time to consider the state of Jewish, Israeli, and American civilization in full. We are honored that you are joining us. Much has surely happened since the last Jewish Leadership Conference in New York City and the inaugural Israeli Conservatism Conference in Jerusalem, both back in 2019. A global pandemic has disrupted, transformed, or shut down many businesses, schools, and even countries. Israel and numerous Arab nations have fashioned an historic set of peace agreements, the Abraham Accords, with the potential to remake the strategic map of the Middle East. There have been multiple elections in Israel, with another trip to the polls later this month. And there is now a new government in America, with very different ideas about the three policy questions that should matter most for American Jews today. Namely, how to preserve religious freedom, how to promote school choice, and how to confront an Iranian regime that seeks to become a nuclear-armed terror state. As the executive director of Tikva, the organization behind this conference, my focus has been on one mission: educating the rising generation of Jews, both in America and in Israel, for the challenges ahead. Remarkably, it was two Jewish schools, SAR and Westchester Day School, that were hit first in the nation with the COVID crisis, including my own daughter, who was one of the first positive cases. And like so many other Jewish, Israeli, and American institutions, Tikva was forced to shut down our offices, cancel our in-person classes, and postpone our residential summer programs for high school and college students. Yet in exile, we adapted. We began offering intensive seminars, live and on Zoom, for Jewish middle schoolers and high schoolers. We aimed high intellectually, and we aimed young. Our first class was on the difference between Jewish and Greek understandings of human nature, targeted to Jewish 7th and 8th graders. Then we added a class on Jewish ideas and the American founding. Then we added classes on everything from Herzl's political Zionism to the biblical book of Jonah, from Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice to the dynamism of the Israeli economy, from the heroism of King David to modern Israeli military strategy. Student demand exploded, leading to hundreds of classes and thousands of enrollments. The unexpected and unplanned birth of Tikva Online Academy. Instead of the 1619 project highlighting America's past sins, we were studying the Hebraic roots and Republican spirit of the American experiment. And while rioters were burning up America's cities, our young Jewish students were studying Nathaniel Hawthorne's moving defense of the family hearth as the nursery of patriotism. Against the tide of trying to make Jewish learning cool, we opted for traditional texts and enduring human questions. Against the tide of teaching young American Jews to be nice, we reminded them that Jewish sovereignty was won on the battlefield. And against the tendency to separate Jewish learning and general studies, we tried to show the future leaders of the Jewish people that Jewish ideas lie at the heart of Western civilization at its best. Over time, the fact that we were running these seminars on a computer screen became much less significant than the fact that we were doing it at all. This same innovation, learning and thinking together on Zoom, is what allows us to convene this major conference with you, even as large in-person gatherings remain shut down. We of course understand what is lost: the energy of bringing together so many kindred spirits in one place, the shared meals and conversations, the new and renewed friendships. Let us look forward to those days again soon. But something is also gained, including the ability to convene such an impressive group of speakers, to bring them at once to our American and Israeli communities, and to reach by far our largest audience ever. So what is our purpose? Of course, we want to make sense of the seismic shifts in Jewish and world affairs over the past many months, guided by the hard-won lessons of Jewish history and the insights of some of the world's most important thinkers and leaders. Yet our deeper purpose has longer horizons. We also see our conference speakers, statesmen and diplomats like Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Ambassador David Friedman, Jewish intellectuals like Ruth Weiss, Meir Soloveichik, and Yoram Chazoni, political thinkers and entrepreneurs like Victor Davis Hanson and Ben Shapiro, strategists and senators like Tom Cotton and Elliot Abrams. We see them as role models for our students. Yes, they are here to educate and inform all of us, but they are also here to inspire those Tikva middle schoolers and high schoolers who will one day follow in their footsteps, and those slightly older Tikva alums who are already running organizations, writing books, leading Jewish congregations, and entering the Knesset. In his new book on the political teachings of Exodus, one of our conference speakers and my own beloved mentor, Dr. Leon Kass, explains why the Passover Seder is so central to Jewish national identity and civilizational resolve. The very first Seder, when the Israelites marked their doors with blood in an act of faith that separated them from their near-defeated Egyptian masters, was a people-forming event. It created the Jewish nation. The annual Seder, that commemorates our liberation from Egypt, is a people-renewing event. It sustains Jewish life from one generation to the next. We are here because we believe that the Jews are an exceptional people, that Jewish civilization is a treasure for the world, that the Jewish state is a heroic moral and political achievement, and that American self-government is a precious inheritance. The annual Jewish Leadership Conference is a little bit like our Seder. It is a chance to renew the ideas and deepen the bonds that tie us together, and it is an opportunity to ask again and afresh the 4 questions that will always confront the Jewish people. Will we perpetuate or abandon our core Jewish values? Will we confront or appease our most zealous enemies? Will we ensure that Israel, our national homeland, flourishes for all time? And will new Jewish leaders emerge to carry our people forward? As the so-called cancel culture becomes ever more radical and intolerant, as traditional Jewish values get hashtagged as bigotry, as Israel becomes the new progressivism's favorite pariah, as Iran rededicates itself to full-scale nuclearization, and as the Jewish state debates its own political and civic future, our 4 questions seem more urgent than ever. When it comes to Jews and Judaism, sometimes our non-Jewish friends understand us better than we understand ourselves. In the epilogue to his marvelous History of the Jews, the British historian Paul Johnson zeroed in on why the Jewish story matters so much to the world. As he put it, all the great conceptual discoveries of the intellect seem obvious and inescapable once they have been revealed, but it requires a special genius to formulate them for the first time. The Jews had this gift. To them we owe the idea of equality before the law, both divine and human, of the sanctity of life and the dignity of the human person, of the individual conscience and so of personal redemption, of the collective conscience and so of social responsibility, of peace as an abstract ideal and love as the foundation of justice, and many other items which constitute the basic moral furniture of the human mind. Without the Jews, the human world and the human soul might have been a much emptier place. Johnson said it well, and it should summon us to live up to our Israelite mission now and always. Too often in history, tyrants, cynics, and madmen have tried to undermine the Hebraic truths of existence by seeking to dehumanize, assimilate, or simply obliterate the Jewish people. And in the postmodern age, the prevailing culture seems hell-bent on forgetting the very moral lessons that Abraham and his descendants were summoned to teach us. They seek to cancel Moses, Lincoln, and Herzl alike. Whether by chance or by chosenness, whether by Mosaic genius or divine providence, the Jews have a purpose. And we should never forget that we serve the world best when we defend and perpetuate our sacred Abrahamic inheritance, from father to daughter, mother to son, against all rational odds. To begin our discussions and welcome our first speaker, it is my great honor to introduce my co-chair, Roger Hertog. Mr. Hertog is chairman of the Tikva Fund, and for decades he has helped build and lead some of the most important ideas institutions in America, including the Manhattan Institute, the New York Historical Society, and his own Hertog programs in political studies. These are surely great achievements. But where Mr. Hertog has left his greatest mark is on the hundreds of key people he has supported, helped, counseled, invested in, and stood behind for many decades. Statesmen and students, rabbis and scholars, policy wonks and educators, Roger is their wisest guide, best critic, and loyal friend, as he has been mine and Tikva's for so many years. Mr. Hertog, I turn it over to you to introduce and engage with our opening speaker, former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo.